Welcome to National Pension Partners, where retirement planning meets peace of mind. Today, we're diving into the 412(e)(3 plan, also known as a fully insured pension plan. This isn't just any retirement plan. It's the gold standard for stability and guaranteed benefits. How does it work? Simple. It's funded exclusively by life insurance and annuity contracts. This means no market risks, no actuarial assumptions, just ironclad guarantees. Think of it like this. You're a small business owner who hates surprises. The 412(e)(3 plan gives you predictable, stable contributions every year. Your future benefits are backed by insurance contracts, so you know exactly what you're getting. No guesswork, no headaches. But there's more. These plans are designed to maximize your contributions and offer significant tax advantages. And with National Pension Partners, you're not just getting a plan, you're getting a team of experts, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, all dedicated to making your retirement as secure as possible. We provide personalized consulting, ensuring that your plan is tailored to your specific needs. Best part, initial consultations and proposals are absolutely free. $0, zero commitment. So if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. With the 412(e)(3 plan, your future is in safe hands. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. Perfect for small business owners who like their finances as predictable as Monday mornings. Stable contributions, ironclad guarantees, and serious tax advantages. It's the trifecta of financial security. And with National Pension Partners, you get a team of brainiacs, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, ensuring your retirement is as secure as Fort Knox. Oh, did we mention the free consultations? That's right. You get a personalized expert proposal with $0 down. So, if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. Because when it comes to your future, boring is the new exciting. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. For more details, check out National Pension Partners at nationalpensions.com. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Nick Pelvin, I'll be your moderator for today's show. And today we're going to look at, of course, the Doge report and see how we're doing on our new format, I guess, of government efficiency or government being deleted. So with that, we're going to bring in the former Comptroller General of the United States, and then afterwards we'll bring our panelists in from around the United States and around the world to discuss what's going on in the Tower of Power of Washington, D.C. So first we'll bring in the Honorable David M. Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, to discuss the Doge report. David.
Hey, Nick, how are you?
I don't know what's happening in Washington, but it seems to me that people are losing their jobs and things are being deleted. Agencies are being deleted. So what's going on?
They're being dramatically downsized. If I can, let me provide an opening here for a few minutes about what Doge is, what it isn't, some of the things that have been going on, not to Doge, but also with regard to some of the actions of the president. And where I think we need to go from here. By the way, in Washington, we're supposed to get up to 6 inches of snow starting at noon tomorrow. So a lot of people are trying to get out and do things today and tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
The Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, as it's known to by its acronym, has a narrower mission than originally advertised. Originally, it was supposed to look at a broad swath of the organization and operations of government. You know, what is government doing? How is government doing it? And potentially make recommendations that would end up, having sweeping implications with regard to the overall structure of the federal government, as well as what it was doing and how it was doing business. the actual mission, as per the executive order, is focused on information systems. Now, obviously, you can get a lot of information out of those information systems that might lead to wanting to consolidate, terminate, devolve, reduce in size, modify mission, etc. Secondly, it's inside of government rather than outside of government. There were at least 3 suits that were filed right off challenging Doge because it was outside of government, and what law should apply to it if it was going to be outside of government. The final executive order has it inside of government as part of the White House operation, which pretty much moots those original suits. There are other ones that exist now on different issues. It will limit the applicability of the Freedom of Information Act to them because they're part of the White House operation, but it will not eliminate the ability of the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, which I ran for about 10 years, to be able to do audits and other activities at the request of the Congress. Thirdly, Elon Musk is the sole leader of it, rather than a co-leader approach involving Vivek Ramaswamy, who seems to be headed to run for governor of Ohio. As I mentioned, it's focused on information systems. It's employing what I would call a shock and awe approach, especially with regard to agencies like USAID, which has clearly strayed dramatically from its original mission. Its original mission was focused on things like providing food, water, and medicine to developing nations, to individuals within developing nations. But some of the things that we've seen coming out based upon Doge's work have nothing to do with that, and I think, quite frankly, are more associated with the last administration's agenda rather than what USAID has been doing for many years, if you will. I'll come back to that. There's not enough transparency in targeting, I think, with regard to what they're doing. They clearly need more transparency. There's a lot of speculation that goes on that's not valid because of the lack of that transparency and communication. And there are a number of suits challenging what they're doing, with regard to, USAID and, other activities. Now, the president has offered this very generous quote unquote buyout program where people will get paid for up to almost 8 months if they end up resigning effective September 30, 2025. And there's a court case on that today as to the legality of that, if you will. But so far, over 40,000 people have said that they would be interested in taking that offer if it stands. And the court extended the due date for people to be able to make a decision past last week to at least today, and could be extended again, if you will. So we'll see what happens there. If I can, let me transition now to some confusion that exists with regard to actions that have been taken by the president so far. And, the difference between what can be done, by executive order, what will require a change in law, and in some cases, what will require a constitutional amendment, because the president's gotten off to such a fast start. He's talked about doing things that cross all 3 of these dimensions. And Doge, for the most part, is going to focus on those areas where the president has the executive authority. In other words, where by executive order or fiat, the president can make it happen and arguably doesn't need Congress's permission, but that can be debatable. All right. First, executive order. People need to understand an executive order is nothing more than policy. It states the policy of the administration, and the president has broad-based authority to set policy within the executive branch, as long as that policy is not contrary to law or contrary to the Constitution, which is the highest level of law in the United States. It may be contrary to past practice. It may be contrary to the desires of some members of Congress or some, federal employees and officials, if you will. But if it's not contrary to law, if it's not contrary to the Constitution, the president has broad-based authority to set policy. And examples of that would be the diversity, equity, and inclusion activities, the remote work and telework, activities, if you will. I mean, those are areas that are a matter of policy. And unless the Congress has specifically stated that certain things need to be done or have specifically appropriated funds for individual activities relating thereto, then the president has broad-based authority. Secondly, law. Two examples. The president terminated 17 inspectors general without providing 30 days advance notice to the Congress and without providing cause for each of the persons. That's contrary to the law. The law was updated in recent years to say that IGs can be terminated by the president, but the president needs to provide at least 30 days advance notice and for cause why the person is being terminated. So we'll see what ends up happening with regard to that, but that's contrary to law. Secondly, USAID. The president has broad-based authority to downsize USAID. At the same point in time, the president doesn't have the authority to eliminate USAID because while it was created by an executive order under the JFK administration, John F. Kennedy, in the 1990s, there was legislation that made it an independent agency and gave it its own appropriation. And therefore, you can't eliminate it. In theory, what's likely to happen is USAID will be consolidated into the State Department rather than being an independent agency, and hopefully will get back to its core mission rather than straying, as evidently it has in recent years, at least during the last administration. And then the ultimate legal authority in the United States, as you know, Nick, and our viewers, is the Constitution of the United States. And one of the areas that the president has talked about that relates to that issue is birthright citizenship. Now, birthright citizenship deals with, if a person is born in the United States, they're automatically a citizen of the United States, even though either one of their parents may be citizens or may not even be legal residents of the United States. That has never been defined in the Constitution. It's been the long-standing practice that if you're born here, that you're a citizen, but it's never been directly addressed by the Supreme Court. And so my view is while the president signed an executive order on that, it clearly is a matter of law and frankly, probably a matter of constitutional principle. And therefore, I think the reason that he did that was he wants the Supreme Court to take it up. Many people would believe that at least one of the parents should be a citizen of the United States for the child to automatically be a citizen of the United States, but we'll see where it goes. Next side of the coin, and this relates to Doge and other kinds of activities. We hear about fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement, but people confuse these terms, okay? First, mismanagement has to do with the operations of government, not managed in an economic, efficient, effective manner, okay? Waste is a matter of policy, and waste is a matter of opinion, okay? And abuse can be in the same category. An example is some of the things that we've seen that USAID has been spending money on, okay, are clearly things that most Americans would not support. They don't have to do with food, water, medicine, clothing, or other basic activities. They have to do with DEI and other types of other activities, clearly far beyond the intended purpose of USAID. But those were being done presumably because it was the policy of the last administration. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's illegal, which is a matter of law. And then obviously fraud is something that is a higher standard. It's illegal, obviously, but it's a higher standard where you have to be able to prove not only that it's illegal, but there was intent associated with it. So people are confusing fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. And then let me end with this. Look, to me, Doge is much needed and long overdue, although it needs to modify its mission, increase its transparency and accountability with regard to what it's doing. But it is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it can save several $100 billion if it goes about it the right way. Okay, it's got to focus primarily on things the president can do through executive orders. But if we want to save the big bucks, if we want to make a huge and lasting difference, that's going to take legislation. And in some cases, it's going to take constitutional amendments. All right. And in my view, when we talk about transformation, we're talking about major changes to what the government does, how it does business, how it measures success, and how it engages in ongoing activities to try to link all the tools of government to achieve specific desired outcome-based results. And so the way I kind of look at it is this. You start off with, what was the constitutional role of the federal government supposed to be? If you want to look at that, look at the preamble of the Constitution and compare that to what the government's doing now, and you'll be in for a shock. So what was it supposed to do versus what it's actually doing today? Secondly, what was the statutory authority for all these different departments and agencies? When they were created, what was their purpose and what were their authorities? And then compare that to what they're actually doing. And you're going to find out there's major mission creep, that people are doing things that are far beyond why they were created and what their intended purpose was. And one example of that is USAID. Thirdly, we still, even though there's a law that requires it, don't have a comprehensive and integrated strategic plan for the federal government, dealing with economic, diplomatic, national security, domestic issues, et cetera. What are we trying to accomplish? How do we measure success in outcome-based terms? We still don't have a set of key national indicators, that says, how are we doing compared to plan? How are we trending? And how do we compare to our competitors? If you don't have these basic things, you've failed Management 101, okay? Next, when you look at government, you have to look at all the different tools that government has: spending, guarantees, regulations, tax preferences, all the different tools. And you have to be able to analyze what are we trying to accomplish with these? What outcome are we trying to achieve? And, are we being successful or not? And how do these things relate to each other? I mean, are they integrated to provide the same type of incentives, or in some cases, are they working at odds with each other, which is clearly the case in many areas, including healthcare? To what extent should we be devolving certain things the federal government are doing to lower levels of government, state or local? To what extent should we privatize or partner with the private sector for certain functions and activities? They need to be done, but they don't necessarily need to be done by the government, but it might involve some government funding. I've always been a big believer in, you want to minimize the number of layers, players, footprints, and hardened silos. Minimize the number of departments and agencies. Minimize the number of offices. Minimize the numbers of layers of management. If you will. It's important to provide more flexibility, to enhance accountability, and to improve, productivity and economy and efficiency. And then last, we need to modernize our management practices in government. Information systems are, in many cases, way out of date and inadequately secured. The human capital policies and practices are to a great extent based upon conditions that existed in the United States in the 1950s. And let's just say things have changed quite a bit since then. So, those are just a few thoughts that hopefully will stimulate our panel to engage. But as I said, Doge, to me, is the first step in what is needed to be a multi-step effort to fundamentally transform the federal government. And keep in mind this, Doge talks about saving $1 billion here, $1 billion there. We're running a deficit of $5.5 billion a day. $5.5 billion a day and growing.
Yeah, that's not a good number. A couple things for our viewers about birthright citizenship. There is a famous case from the Supreme Court. It's called U.S. versus Wonka. It's in 1898. And what you find out is that there was actually 2 dissents from the Supreme Court. They did allow the birthright citizenship, but it also says under jurisdiction. And they dealt with Chinese people, whether or not they were under the jurisdiction. And then there was another case afterwards where they said Indians weren't under the jurisdiction of the United States, Native American Indians. So they actually had to pass a law to provide that. So this whole birthright citizenship may be revisited by the court, because the last major case was 1898, and there were 2 dissents. So we'll take a look at that. But right now, we're going to take a look at Doge, and we have our panelists from around the world. We're going to bring in Rick Rosner from the High IQ Society, Kim Calhoun, the president of Pod TV, Mark Lee, who is with Pod TV in the United States. We also have Sasha Starr with Pod TV in Canada, and a special guest, Gretchen Wallet, who's actually the author of Trump and Lincoln. So we're going to see what she has to say about this whole thing. But we have our panelists, hands are raised everywhere. So I guess we'll start with Mark Lee, because he just came back from the NAFTA conference in Miami Beach, or actually in Miami this year, and may have some comments about Doge.
No, I just had a quick question for David. I was just wanting his take on it, because I've been trying to figure this out for a while, but it is a Trump move that actually, to me, makes somewhat sense. And it's not a big fan all the time of things that he does, but I was just wondering, how is it taking us so long to just now get rid of the notion of producing pennies? Because I've got in my own house a collection of pennies laying around here somewhere and everything like that. And I did see that today he made an announcement that there would be no more pennies printed for a while and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering your take on this, and if this is a good move, because it seems like that's a good move. And I've oftentimes wondered why we have continued to print not just the pennies, but the nickels and the dimes and a number of other things that we have continued to print. And I did see that announcement made earlier today that the pennies have been totally stopped, at least for now. But as one that's in this economic force, I was just wondering your thoughts about the notion that pennies will no longer be printed.
GAO recommended in 1996 that we cease minting the penny. 1996, and this is one of the issues. All right, GAO and the inspectors general do work. They do audits, investigations, policy analysis, program reviews, compliance issues, etc., and they make recommendations. But the recommendations ultimately either have to be adopted by the executive branch or, in some cases, the Congress. And they try to provide transparency on what they're recommending and why, what they think the benefit is, and they try to make sure that they get adopted, but they can't force them to be adopted. Okay, the president can force stuff to be adopted if it's within his authority. All right. So in this particular case, this is something that GAO recommended in 1996. And you finally have a president that says enough is enough. We're not going to do it anymore.
So
Rick Rosner
looked it up, and it costs the government loses $110 million a year making pennies, which coincidentally is how much it costs for Trump to go to Mar-a-Lago 32 times a year. If you do the math, they equal out.
All right.
But the Mint has done a genius thing for the past 20 years, which is they put different states and national monuments on the back of quarters. Now, David's going to have to tell me whether I'm wrong or not, but if you make quarters or if you make currency into collector's items and people get them and then they just squirrel them away in a drawer, that helps, right? Because they're giving money to the government. You're buying those quarters, and then you're just if
as long as you don't lose money every time you mint one, okay?
Right.
Because if people are hoarding them, and it costs you more money to make a new one, then you can't make it up in volume.
Well, it's not the case with quarters. With
that's correct. That's correct, and that's an important point. I agree with you.
It costs 2.72 cents to make every penny, so the government is losing 1.7 cents on every penny.
Well,
But
and
we
the
should-
quar-
we
and
should-
the quarters and the half dollars when we had them used to be made of silver, and now, you've heard me talk about the concerning parallels between the United States and the Roman Empire. And remember, one of the things the Roman Empire did, in addition to being fiscally responsible, is they ultimately had less and less precious metals in their money, right? And of course, paper has nothing precious about it. But go ahead.
Yeah, Gretchen.
Gretchen's got her hand up.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's perspective on pennies and on government waste. I think I speak for millions of American people who are not interested in the pennies, but they add up to the trillions of dollars. Of course, it's already been said that America is so deep in debt that there is not much of a future. One thing about Donald Trump, we need to understand how he operates. He operates very much like Abraham Lincoln did during the Civil War. His philosophy on the Constitution was it was going to be stretched and pulled and tugged, and in many ways that it was perhaps not meant to before he succeeded in defeating the South and the slave state of the Confederacy. But he wasn't concerned about that. Donald Trump is not concerned about what he is not able to do. He will push the Constitution to accomplish what the American people have hired him to do and have elected him to do, which is get rid of the injustice, the waste, the corruption, and all of this that is buried in a deep state that has been operating nefariously for decades. And one thing about Donald Trump, he will absolutely do what Lincoln did, forward motion and absolute focus on what he was elected to do, which is to make America great again, to fix the nation. The American people want that. And he will do it in every way possible. And he will also be fought by not only the establishment, the deep state, the Democrats, not having a fair judiciary anymore is also something that he might tackle. But what the term that was mentioned was he moves quickly. He's not concerned about avoiding errors. He simply wants to get the job done. And he's done that all of his life. He's a fighter, and he will continue to do that. And the American people, when they understand what Doge is revealing, not just in USAID, but also in the other areas, that Donald Trump has spent 4 years making lists of exactly what was going to happen when he first took office. So this is nothing that he's kind of feeling his way. He spent the first administration realizing who was against him. And the second administration will be accomplishing the defeat of the deep state and getting as much done as he possibly can. And as long as you understand that Donald Trump will change direction if he has to, if it's not working, but he will absolutely move quickly with focus and not caring who is against him, because he has the backing of the American people. So, as long as we understand Donald Trump, yesterday we saw him attend a football game. And if you think it was just him having fun at a football game, then you don't know Donald Trump. He defeated the Taylor Swift era of the NFL yesterday. And he was there making sure that everybody knew he was the victor in this battle. So there's more to Donald Trump. Whenever, you think, well, what's he doing? There's usually something underneath. There's a reason that he's there, and he's really good at it.
Let me jump in if I can.
Sure.
Of course, I think it's fair to say that Donald Trump represents the views of a majority of the American people, because he won a majority of the popular vote. He also won the electoral vote, which is the only thing that counts for the presidential election. I do agree that the president has had 4 years to analyze what does he want to accomplish, what worked, what didn't work, who does he want on his team, versus having to rely upon others to decide who ought to be part of his team, since he really had not been in politics before, had not been involved in Washington before, if you will. I do agree that he's got a game plan and that he's going to be very aggressive. And he will get pushback from the quote unquote deep state. Okay. He will get pushback from some in Congress. There will be suits, that will have to be dealt with. There are already a bunch of them right now. I will say this as an example. I'm currently on the Defense Business Board, and I've been on the Defense Business Board on and off of it since its inception during the Bush 43 administration. And I've been pushing for years for much more dramatic change in the Defense Department than any administration has been willing to undertake. And there's been, pushback from the top, whether it's Republican or Democrat administration. Obviously, there's pushback from the unions. There's even pushback from, the military in certain regards. And there's definitely pushback from Congress, because you got to remember the 4-letter word that members of Congress care about a lot, and that is jobs. And so when you're talking about weapon systems, you're talking about bases, you're talking about, munition suppliers, you're talking about jobs. And if they happen to be in their state or their district, then they get real worked up about it. If you don't want to do it or don't want to do as much or whatever else. I am encouraging the current administration to take on a lot of those issues. And I think that, and that's just one example. You can say that in many other areas of government. For example, if we've got 12 people who are 150 years old that are getting Social Security checks, I'm going to guess that they're not really the ones cashing the checks if the checks are being cashed. And that's an example of systems problems, where one system is not integrated with another one. And we're not running the death records, against the payment systems. Same thing can be said for things like, the IRS as well. So I think we need a disruptor. At the same point in time, we do have checks and balances in our system. We do have the courts. We do have the Congress. We do have the Constitution. And some of the things that he wants to do, he can do unilaterally. Some of the things are going to take Congress, and some of them are going to take constitutional amendments. By the way, one last thing. After Lincoln, the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 after the Civil War. And it has several sections of the 14th Amendment. It deals with multiple subject matters, one of which is relevant to what Gretchen mentioned, which we talk about a lot of the time, which is our debt, our mounting debt burdens, okay? There's only 2 things guaranteed by the Constitution that are financial obligations. Number 1, U.S. Treasury debt and accrued interest. You can't default on that. You must pay it. You can default on anything else, but you can't default on that, okay, under the Constitution. So even though some people tell you that, we're going to have a debt default, if we don't do this or do that or whatever. Secondly, Union Civil War pensions. Now, I'm from Alabama. They didn't guarantee our pensions. I think I know why. But all the Union Civil War pensions have been paid. But beyond that, Social Security, Medicare, any kind of contractual obligations, they're not guaranteed by the Constitution. All right. And they may be a matter of contract law or whatever else. But we got to recognize the reality that Doge can help us. There's no question about it. But the really heavy lifting stuff, mandatory spending, tax reform, et cetera, that's going to take legislation. And we need to not just win the battle, we need to win the war.
So Trump's approval is at 49%, which is the highest of his entire political career. But it will decline from here because every president's approval declines after the honeymoon period. So his approval may decline to about I think 45% for quite a while, unless something great or awful happens. So, and he'll have about 45% disapproval. So the country will continue to be pretty equally divided. Now, Musk's approval numbers are much lower than that, with, according to, I don't know, where's this survey from? CBS, YouGov, 13% of Americans want Musk to have as much influence over the country as he currently does. Now, Musk could help himself, as David said, by being a little bit more transparent and honest. He does a lot of trolling on X and puts out stuff that is like thumbing his nose at people who don't like what he's doing. And also, there's a healthy amount of BS in some of his tweets. So,
just really quickly, David, I was going to ask a question based on something that Gretchen said earlier and everything along those lines. One, there have been some protests, some that have been major, some that have been small, because even during the time that me and Kim were at this media conference and everything, there was, which I didn't find out about until I came back here to this area, because there was one in Raleigh. I'm sure there was one in Florida, but there are folks that are not pleased with the administration and all along those lines. So there was a entire protest, kind of what Rick was alluding to, called 50-50-1 and something like that. So there is a groundswell of people that are not pleased with some of these executive orders and all along those lines. And I think that I know you were involved with No Label, that Bernie Sanders has thrown his organization behind this organization, because it was all supposed to be done on one day, which is, it was 50, I think 50 sites, 50 states, one day. It was the protest that took place like about 4 or 5 days ago. And like I said, I was out of pocket, so I did not see the protest and everything. But I was just wondering your take, one, on that, and also your take, David, on one of the things that came out in addition to the pennies being stopped was a new expense, because one of the things that was proposed was a monument. And we've already got monuments that honor Lincoln, that honor MLK, and things like that. But apparently there is a notion that President Trump wants to put together this monument of 100 heroes. And some of the heroes range from maybe like some of the famous astronauts to Harriet Tubman to a number of other folks as well. And I have no idea, even though I probably should know, how much monuments cost and all along those lines. So what would be the expense of that if that was to be built, and isn't that kind of counter to what he's saying he wants to do if he's trying to trim expenses as well? But I'm just wondering your take on that, because I did see that he was.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, I didn't see much reporting on the so-called protests, if you will. So if they occurred, they didn't get a whole lot of coverage. I don't think they had much of an impact either. Okay. What did get a lot of coverage here yesterday in Washington was a number of Democratic members of Congress tried to get into the Department of Education, and one security guard, one unarmed security guard, kept them from going in. I couldn't believe it. I mean, not one person said, "I'm going in, move aside." I mean, the one guy shut them all down, which I thought was pretty amazing. On any monuments, they ought to be privately financed. The government shouldn't pay for that. I mean, if you're going to create a monument like that, which may be meritorious, I don't know, but it ought to be privately financed.
That's a good idea. The stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame are all privately financed. You got to come up with $30,000 to get your star on the sidewalk.
But I got the impression that he was going to do the same thing that they do with the presidential libraries. So, like I said, it was a Trump proposal to do this.
Those are privately financed, Mark.
Okay.
Presidential libraries are privately financed, and Biden's concerned because he ain't raising any money for his presidential library.
Yeah, Sasha from Canada.
Okay, David, a question to you. We are talking a lot about the internal U.S. politics and the approval of Trump and Elon Musk and so on. I'll leave it up to you, our dear American friends. I would like to talk about the international situation. David, you are so seriously discussing the U.S. International efforts and so on. You're not telling us what's really happening. The Japanese, Chinese, and many Asian investors are running away from U.S. debt obligations. U.S. is more and more looks like a beggar on international scene, and all this grandiose Trump's invention that he is going to create this fund and this fund, and he is going to direct trillions of dollars from Saudi Arabia or some other countries or so on. I'm sorry, David, this is not what reality tells us. Reality is very different. He's alienating majority of all countries. Look at the BRICS. They're getting 23 new members, including Nigeria, Indonesia, because people around the world getting sick and tired of all the tariffs and all the threats, and even our little Prime Minister Trudeau, that I don't regard at all, even he said in his little wisdom that I was dealing with Donald Trump 5-6 years ago. That's his strategy. He will talk about the tariffs and so on. And then when it comes to implementation, he will back away. He will extract a little things here and there. That's all what he is doing. So do you think that other European countries don't understand that? If Canada's prime minister could, so why don't you think that France, Germany, UK, you think they're dumb? They don't understand that? Canada now has a new mission. They are redirecting all their oil imports to China and to other Asian countries. And Canada is the biggest exporter to United States. So count that oil is out. It's not going to be longer available to U.S. Canada now is working on the proposal to join European Union, because to have such a dangerous friend and neighbor as United States makes Canada mission almost no choice situation as to look for different markets. And Europe as well, not only Denmark, who is being threatened by annexation of Greenland, but many other European countries is just waiting for their turn. And this is Trump's the strategy not to deal with the blocs such as European Union or NATO or any other one, but directly with each country alone. So let's see, he will go for France, he will import the tariffs on French cheese and French wine, unless France will do this and that. And actually, he will propose that France has to join all this his another fund, high-tech fund, by investing $5 trillion or $15 trillion, or actually each Frenchman has to pay $25,000. So this way you will avoid my sanctions. If not, if you will pay only $24,000, it's not good enough, and the sanctions will follow. That is policy. It's not going anywhere. The prestige and the meaning of U.S. as a whole, U.S. soft power, it's all being destroyed by this administration. Thank you.
All right. Well, all right. That's quite a bit. All right. Let me give you a few thoughts. One, Trump uses tariffs as a negotiation tool.
No longer will work. No.
Hold on. Let me finish. Okay. He uses them as a negotiation tool to try to achieve various things. Okay. And in many cases, they don't get imposed. All right. As you noted, originally he used them against as a threat against Canada and Mexico, dealing with border security issues, dealing with the flow of illegal immigrants, dealing with the flow of illegal drugs. You know, that's been delayed for a month. We'll see what ends up happening after this. Beyond that, he's a believer in reciprocity. He's a believer in, if you're going to tax, for example, if you're going to have an import tax on our autos, then we're going to have an import tax on your autos, and they ought to be the same percentage, if you will. He does believe, I believe, in bilateral arrangements rather than multilateral arrangements. You're seeing that, okay? You know, some of the things that he's doing, I think, could be harmful. Let's take USAID, which we talked about, right? I mean, USAID originally focused on food, water, clothing, medicine. Those are all very positive things, right? That gives a very good image for the United States, in third world countries, whether it be in Africa or whether it be in South America or whatever. We don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, they've strayed from their mission, but they need to get back to their mission, and we need them to do that. It's good for us from a diplomatic standpoint, et cetera. Some of the problems that you talked about, Sasha, and I appreciate it very much, are problems that existed before Trump came in. For example, the BRICS. The expansion of the BRICS was announced before Trump came in. Maybe that'll exacerbate it. Trump's answer is, well, if you want to try to put together an alternative reserve currency, I'm going to put 100% tariff on all. Well, that's another example of him using tariffs to try to solve everything. My answer to that is, they're not the problem. We're the problem. We need to put our finances in order, okay? And that's been a problem for a long time, especially since 2008 when things really spun out of control. We need to put our finances in order. And if you look at the market, okay, you're correct that Japan and China and certain other countries that historically have been big purchasers of our debt, their appetite has been cut. All right. They've cut their appetite to buy our debt. If you look at the price of gold, if you look at the rate that we have to pay for 10-year treasuries, which is, linked to a great extent to mortgages and to mortgage rates. All right. They've gone up. Okay. They've gone up since the election because people are not just focused on today. Markets aren't. They're concerned about the longer term. Right. And unfortunately, politicians typically just focus on today or between now and the next election, which is part of our disease that we got to come to grips with. So some of the things you're talking about, I think, relate more to Trump, but some of them are systemic problems that we've had for a long time that we need to come to grips with.
David, may I ask you, a long time ago, I think 1971, the United States dollar left the gold standard.
Right. It was under. Yeah.
Absolutely. So today, the US dollar is not supported or not guaranteed by anything except the goodwill of United States of America,
Right.
its industries, its businesses, and so on. So now, while the debt is 36 or somebody says 37 now $trillion, and it goes
36.3.
Thank you. Goes higher and higher, and the current administration destroys all the pillars which support U.S. dollars, the goodwill of America, the image, the soft power. Everything is being distracted, being gone because of the tariffs. Are going to put 25% tariff? Okay, maybe he will, maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter. The goodwill evaporates. He is killing these pillars of US dollar. And now BRICS countries are saying how we can trade of a currency of a country which is technically bankrupt. How can we do that? We need something else.
Sasha, in fairness, there are many, many nations that would meet that definition of being technically bankrupt. Okay.
Agreed.
And there are many, many nations that have fiat currencies like we have. But what I will say is this, and then we'll go to others. What I will say is this: we are abusing, and have been for years, our position as the world's leading reserve currency. No country is exempt from the laws of prudent finance. We have lost control of our finances. We need to regain them sooner rather than later if we want to maintain the dollar as the preeminent reserve currency. I don't think it'll ever not be a reserve currency, but I think we will lose market share, potentially at an increasing accelerated rate if we don't change course. That's my view. Who's up next?
I had a quick. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about what should be important right now. And everyone should take a look at their own financial situation while the United States is getting its pocketbook under budget Hopefully that's what it's doing. Let's pray and hope that they're more focused on getting things right rather than lining their own pockets. It concerns me that, this is going to be a question to David, about Elon's access to certain tools, such as the Treasury. But really, what people need to do now is focus on yourself, because might not be a Social Security for you to claim. Okay, there might not be certain things that you relied on or were going to rely on for retirement. Prepare retirement to cost you almost every penny you have, which we're not going to have pennies anymore, for health care. Because not one of these individuals that are put into office have addressed the biggest problem that we have, and that's the cost of health care and the fact that insurance companies have destroyed it for us. So I think these are two things that really should be addressed, as much as all of the circus act that they're doing and the knee jerking, which causes a tremendous amount of casualties that are unnecessary. But David, what fear should we have for someone like Elon to have been given access to the Treasury? I mean, what should we be concerned about?
Well, the question is, what type of access has been given, and who are the people that have been given the access? In other words, what are their backgrounds? Have they been subject to background checks? What type of internal controls exist to make sure that they cannot do anything with regard to coding or the systems and things of that nature? I think that, in many cases, I think unnecessary speculation. But that's because of a lack of transparency. There needs to be a lot.
Thank you. There's no transparency in any of this.
There needs to be a lot more transparency. Let's talk about healthcare real quickly, and then we'll go to Gretchen. Okay. We have two issues on healthcare. There's more fraud in healthcare in the government than anything else. Why? Because that's where the money is.
That's
okay.
Right.
All right. And so. And if you look, every year there are reports of improper payments. Every 2 years, the GAO has the high risk list. Okay. And then every year there's a duplication, overlap, and redundancy that's published, by the GAO, if you will. The improper payments of the Inspector Generals and GAO. And healthcare leads the list, right? And so it's not unusual for the Doge people to want to go in and take a look at what's going on with regard to healthcare because of that fact. I can't remember who it was. They asked why they robbed banks. They said that's where the money is. Well, healthcare is where the money is, right?
Right.
The second thing is, this country has never had a debate that we need to have on healthcare. We spend much more of our economy on healthcare than any other nation, and we get below average healthcare outcomes. That's totally unacceptable. By the way, that's the same thing for K through 12 education, but I won't go there right now. Okay?
No, we agree.
My point is this. We've never had an honest discussion and debate about how much universal, I did use the word universal, healthcare should be provided, through a public system, delivered privately, everybody in the population, all right, versus how much people ought to be responsible for, employers ought to be responsible for, unions or whatever. In my view, that's preventative wellness and catastrophic. That everybody needs that, no matter what your age is. The government should always do more for veterans. The government should always do more for the poor. But the problem in many cases is the government promises too much to too many, subsidizes too many, and that is not a sustainable system. You have to have three things for any system to be successful and sustainable. And we're over 3 in healthcare. That's a strikeout. Number 1, properly designed incentives that encourage people to do the right thing and discourage them from doing the wrong thing. Adequate transparency as to cost and quality, and appropriate accountability. We're 0 for 3. We're 0 for 3 in K through 12 education, by the way, too. All right. So my point is, we need to get back to the fundamentals. All right. We need to have what is a universal need rather than an unlimited individual want. All right. And how do we align these three basic elements that are necessary for any system, tax system, education, healthcare, you name it, immigration? They have to meet these three principles. If they don't meet these three principles, you will not achieve sustainable success. Gretchen,
David, one of the things that has just caught my eye as I travel around the world, and I started researching more in their medical systems. Majority of them are free to the public. The majority of them are far greater and better than our own healthcare system here. I mean, what they receive is amazing because they want you better. The whole idea is to get the people healthy, and so the healthcare systems are 100% in my book right now better in other countries than they are here.
First, nothing's free. They may be paid for through taxes, but nothing's free. Gretchen?
Well, thank you so much. I do apologize. I need to leave shortly, but I wanted to just kind of give my perspective again, understanding through a historian where our nation has been before. Yes, we are at a critical crossroads, and anyone who thinks this is business as usual or that Donald Trump is an aberration and as soon as he's gone, things will get back to normal, that's what the people who elected him to do not want. All of the things that you've said, we need a sustainable government. We need all of these things to meet those criteria in order to be successful. And it is this huge obese cancer that has been allowed to grow because elected officials find it difficult to, I can't cut that, I can't cut that, I can't cut that because I won't get reelected if I cut it. Donald Trump is here, and so is Elon Musk and everyone on the Trump team. And he has vetted them in the most important way. By the way, Elon Musk has top secret clearance, and they will do whatever they need to do. People find it refreshing that Elon Musk is very transparent in what he's finding. Yes, there are some issues with this isn't how government's supposed to talk and act. The American people are glad about that. But we also see the foreign policy. Donald Trump has this huge it's not just one huge cancer, it's a bunch of them. And he is going to excise the best that he can all of the crap that the American people have realized has been growing into this $37 trillion national debt. And it only gets bigger, but Donald Trump is here to make it smaller. But he will be working as a multitasker, one of the most brilliant multitaskers we have in government today, in the United States today, trying in the same way that Lincoln had to deal with the foreign policy and, treading lightly so that countries did not do something that was against American interests. Donald Trump is there. Donald Trump is on the domestic front. Donald Trump is everywhere. Yes, we don't need to know exactly where he is. He moves so quickly that he will be way beyond the 24/7 news cycle for perhaps his entire 4-year term. Right. But seeing at it at the broad spectrum of history is he's here to win this war, as you said, but he's tackling all the battles. And it is in the same philosophy that Lincoln did. It is forward motion. It has begun. Yeah. He started here. He's working there. He is just step by step by step. Okay, and David, he will continue to do it because he's not concerned about approval numbers, which are the highest he's ever had.
We're about the end of our time.
Thank you very much. I need to go. I do apologize.
Thank you. Elon may have a top secret clearance, and I have no problem with that. But understand, the question is, what process was used to give these people clearances? I've got a top secret SCI clearance. I've had full field investigations by the FBI multiple times. Okay, the president has the authority to give a clearance without any background checks or whatever. So that's another example of where there needs to be transparency. What kind of background checks, not necessarily with regard to Elon, but all the other people that are working. All right. Go ahead, buddy.
So 8 trillion of the 37 trillion came from Trump himself with a massive tax cut. So
part of it was that, but believe it or not, the president who has the worst record in modern times on debt to GDP, which is the right metric, is Barack Obama. It's not close.
Okay, and with that, we're going to have to go because we're at the hour, but we want to thank the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, and our panelists, and of course, our viewers in the United States and around the world, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.